Hello everyone and welcome to a webinar on investigating process injection threats, essential detection strategies. I'm Nandini Bharadwaj, the operating officer at CWL, and I'm very excited to have you all here with us today. So let's get started. So before we start, let me tell you a bit about us. So CyberWarFare Labs is a leading cybersecurity infosec company offering comprehensive solution to help individuals and organizations to develop essential cybersecurity skills. Our offering includes LMS portal, that is Learning Management System platform. This provides enrolled user with a course study material, including HD videos and PDFs for a wide range of cybersecurity courses. The second one is CCSP, that is CWL Cybersecurity Playground platform. So it offers a theme-based labs designed to simulate real-world scenarios. User can start their labs at their own convenience, providing flexible hands-on practice. And number third is Infinity Learning Platform. So it's a plug-and-play platform offering immersive learning experience with challenges across red teaming, blue teaming, and purple teaming and cloud security domains. So as of now, this platform is currently free of cost. So you can just enroll and start upscaling. CWL also support customized on-site training requests and accept bulk orders for corporate training needs. So if you want to know more information or to place an inquiry, contact us at support@cyberwarfare.live. Okay, so let's move on to next slide. Okay, so now let's take a moment to introduce our speaker for today's webinar, that is Hari Suthan S. He is a senior security engineer at CWL, where his passion for cybersecurity shines through in his work. With a strong interest in the realm of cyber defense, Hari Suthan is on a mission to bolster digital security and safeguard against the ever-evolving landscape of cyber threats. Okay, so that's all about the speaker. And dear participants, as promised, we are excited to share that the candidates who has participated in the giveaway, uh, that they have to answer in like why blue teaming is better than red teaming, will win our popular and best-selling course, that is Blue Teaming Fundamental, at 50% off. So the winner of the giveaway will be announced soon by the next week. And if you haven't participated in the giveaway event, I'll be posting the link in the chat box and other materials, promised materials within 2 days. You will receive the other promised material as well. So thank you for being part of this webinar, and we look forward for a continuous participation. And here, without further ado, I would like Hari to take over, and let's get started.
Hello everyone. So let's quickly jump into our session. So today's session will be going to be a more interesting stuff that we will be. So let's quickly jump into our session. So today's our session is going to be a very interesting stuff. We will be majorly focusing on how we will be investigating the process injection threat and we will be came up with multiple detection strategy. So begin we have been proceed our session. So we have a very good introduction about ourselves. So let's quickly jump into the agenda. So today's agenda is simple and clear. First, we will be discussing about the basic process injection techniques, so which will be going to help us to be do a better defense against those threats. And we will be understanding various multiple techniques, including the classic process injection and the process following, where we will be get to be investigating using the SIM and other similar tools, which will be helpful for our investigation. And we will be investigating that. First we will be try understanding it's working, and we will be proceed our investigation using our tools. So before get starting into our session, the major question is will be get arise when it's been a process injection is the traditional monitoring techniques will be get failed over the process injection threat. There will be a huge saying that the advanced techniques like the process injection and the adversarial technique which the adversaries have been used for defense evasion or the persistent will not be get identified using our traditional monitoring tools like the SIM. It required a more advanced tools like the EDR, XDR to get identify those. Why it's been happening? So that's our first question which get need to be answered. So as everybody aware, like the logging and monitoring is an essential part of blue teaming. It's been a very core heart. Like the entire defense has been mostly rely on such monitoring tool where we have been correlating various attack pattern and event IDs, and we have been determining its like malicious or legit activity. But when it's come to this advanced adversarial technique like process injection and other techniques, it's been getting failed. Why? Because first we need to understand how the typical process injection work and what are all the associated logs which get to be accumulated, and we will be get to know why it's been getting failed. So before jumping into it, I came across a very interesting blog in the medium, so I like to share it over it. So by reviewing this, you will get to have a very good idea why the detection is getting failed. Okay, so the techniques like process injection and other malwares and malware based techniques will be effectively get identified with the help of EDRs and XDRs. Why? Because when it's come to a EDR or the XDR module, they will be get deploying their particular drivers, and the proactive monitoring service will be get monitored over the user LAN, and we get to deploy the EDR driver at the kernel LAN. So if any process or a service which has been get to be requires some particular calls towards the kernel LAN which can be get monitored, and we can further correlate those logs to perform our detection. So this make the endpoint and the endpoint detection more secure. But as it's come to a cost financial state, enterprise has multiple drawbacks to they need to be get invest on this particular EDR solution, and the management will also be get used. So when it's come to a EDR deployment, the endpoint should at least get to have a 16 GB of RAM, and there is a lot of resource usage. At every process creation, this particular EDR service will be hooking their DLL to monitor their process, and based on the behavior, it will be get identified those. So every advanced advancement will came with the pros and cons. The only cons in this particular EDR and XDR service is their resource usage and the cost management. Yeah. So the our ultimate goal of this webinar, how we can effectively investigate these types of advanced process injection threat with the traditional monitoring. So where we will be correlating as much as we can to determine those particular activity with our traditional monitoring stuff. Yeah, let's quickly jump into our process injection technique. So I hope like before jumping into our investigation, we first required the understanding of process injection technique. When it's come to a adversarial technique detection, so it is becoming mandatory to have the understanding and knowledge of how the red teamers or the adversarials have been executing their technique over the enterprise. First and foremost, we need to understand their techniques, we need to identify their pattern, and based on that, we will be doing our investigation and correlation. You might be came up with the question why it's been required. Because the techniques where the adversaries are going to be execute will be look much similar to the legit services, so it will become a very hard for the investigator to be differentiate the legit service from the malicious service. So in such case, even in case of the process injection, attackers will be generally targeting the legit service and performing their malicious action. Unless or until if the defenders will have an understanding about this particular stuff, there will be a very mess up while performing their investigation. It's been too hard to classify whether the particular identified incident is it's a true positive or a false positive. It will be a case. So that's why it's been important for the defender to get mm, understand the process to perform a better defense. So the first we will be get to understand the process injection technique. So we will be discussing about like the evolution of process injection technique. As we know, the malwares or the virus are being constantly get dropped over the enterprise system with various exploiting vulnerability or by the insider threat. Okay, so the attackers will be dropping some executables or malicious DLL. It can be a file, it can be a staged or stageless malware. So stage we will be get to observe multiple exe DLL which get dropped by the attacker over the endpoints, and they will be getting a stable connection over their C2, or they will be performing various malicious action like credential dumping or performing a ransomware. There are much more possibility when they get to drop a stage. So it will be it initially considered as easy as compared to the stageless. Why? Because we get to easily monitor those suspicious file, and we will be performing our the EDR or the XDR which get deployed over the endpoint will easily identified based on their hashes or based on their behavior. It will be get easily identified. But when it's come to a stageless, it will be bit harder. Why? Because there is no file, there is no such actions on file which get involved in their malicious process. So it will be get executed or get injected in the memory of the targeted victim, and from there it will be get performing their action. So generally the fileless malwares or the virus will get target the legit process, and they will be get injected some malicious payload into the memory, and it will be get performed. The the one which why the traditional monitoring is get failed, it's been failed to monitor the memory. So as a blue team perspective, we came to know that it's been such a hard thing to get get collect the logs from various system and get to stored in a centralized way, because it will be generally accumulated with lots and lots of logs. It has been very hard to get manage those logs based on their policy and complaints across the enterprise. And when we've been also pushed to monitor the memory logs, it's been such a impossible things on the traditional monitoring. But this can be get achieved by the EDRs and XDRs. But even though it will be get with more, it required more resource, and it will be get with lots of cons. So here we will be get to understand the process injection technique and with the relevant detection pattern. So the generally process injection is simply but the way of maintaining a persistent additionally by evading the defense on the targeted system. So the attacker's ultimate goal on executing the process injection to get maintain the persistence over the endpoints and to evade multiple defenses. Why it will be why it's been get involved in the defense evasion? In case of as I mentioned previously, in case of process injection will generally target the legit processes which are being get run over the endpoints. So if attackers can get identify the vulnerable process, or if they have a privilege to create a process where they will be injecting their malicious code, which will be get hard, it will be get harder in case of defense, more identified by the defense solution, and it can be get easily maintain its persistent with the endpoint over the C2 or with the attacker server. So this is the basic character. So the malicious executable will get injected, get targeted legit process and inject their malicious code over it. So let's quickly jump into a very yeah, graphical representative. It will get help you to a better understanding. So let's assume the attacker is being get dropped on executable over the targeted victim. In such case of example, the attacker has been targeting the process of notepad.exe. as as we know, the notepad is a very common application which has been get pre-installed on every machine, and been it it it's been very accessible to. So in such case, the attacker targets such process and inject and create a memory space over the particular notepad.exe and inject their payload. Even the particular dropper will get identified over the defender or the endpoints. Even if the dropper file get deleted, the particular injected payload will get remain same and maintain the persistent over the victim. So it is a simple ideology of how the process injection will get to be worked. So I hope till this point you will get to have the basic understanding how the process injection work. So as we know, like still we haven't jumped into the direction state, but as I suggested, by understanding this particular flow, you will get to know how this particular process injection is happening, and you will get to know the better defense against it. So if you still have some queries and doubt, just yeah, if you still have some queries and doubt, just hold your uh, questions till the end of the session. We will be having a Q&A session at the very last. Okay, let's quickly jump into our next slide. So the mentioned or the commonly used process injection technique used by many adversarials and red teamers. So based on their characteristic and behavior, this has been get classified over it like the classic process injection, APC code injection, section mapping, modular stomping, process hollowing, double ganging, transacted hollowing, process hyperdumping, process ghosting. So there are multiple different way of injecting and executing a malicious payload over the targeted process. So based on its character and behavior, it will be get classified over it. So in our webinar, we will be going to quickly look into a two majorly used process injection technique across the enterprise and the adversaries, where we will be understanding their flow and executing their detection over it. So let's quickly start from the classic process injection. Yeah. So there is another interesting section which will need to be get covered before proceeding our process injection. So as we know, there will be a lot of syscalls will be get happening. Get will be requested from the user land and the kernel land. So these they're listed or some commonly used syscalls which has been get associated with the process injection. So as I said, the technique will be remains from the like the attacker will be querying the process, either they will be listing the process which has been getting pre-run over the targeted victim. We will be get to often see there are multiple API calls related to NT query information process and or NT query information thread. So there will be a high chance if the attacker has a privilege, or if the process injection has been designed in such a way the attacker can successfully open a process by using this particular syscalls like NT-open process or NT-open thread. So they can also effectively read the process by using this particular syscall, and writing it will be performed in the simultaneous way. Why we have get to understand this particular one, like while performing the investigation, it will be get used, we will be seeing lot of calls related to this particular one. By correlating such a event will helps us to determine the root cause over it. So these are all some commonly used syscalls while performing the process injection. So understanding the classic process injection and the process hollowing. Let's first quickly jump into by starting the classic process by understanding the working of classic process injection. So as I said previously, the characteristic and behavior of the process injection will be get varied. So first we will be jumping into the classic process injection and get to understand its working. So it's one of the basic injection technique which used by the attacker to inject the malicious code into the legitimate process, which later allow us to execute the malicious code which is being get used to injected. So this particular method is being often used to evade detection and by the traditional monitoring tool, not by the EDRs and XDRs, but by the traditional monitoring tool. So the classic process injection working is much simpler. So we will be not be more focusing on the offensive part, but we will be get to understand its working. So in case of classic process injection, it will be often get involving opening a process, or it will be get identify the running process, vice versa. But there is a high chance it will be get targeting the running process, which will not be get involved in opening any process, but there might be a chance. So the attacker, the dropper will get first look for the running process, and if they get to find some running process, they will be first allocating the memory to the targeted process, and they will be injecting their payload. So the payload is nothing but it can be a reverse shell, or it can be any other malicious stuff which we will be going to perform over the targeted victim. After get to allocate the memory over the target process and writing the particular payload into the target process, we will be get to execute those. So this is the simplest and working of the classic process injection, where it will be first initially look for the um, running process, or alternatively it might be creating the process on its own, and later it will be allocating the memory and writing or injecting the payload over the allocated memory and execute the injected code. So how the typical process injection get to be investigated? So here we will be using both the log, event log and the sysmon logs, which where we have been deployed over one endpoint and we have been performed this particular classic injection and we collected those. So let me quickly jump into my SIM. So I hope like my SIM is get to be visible. Can anyone confirm it? Yeah, cool. So let me quickly jump into it. As I mentioned, so we already pre attacked those and collected the logs. So here we will be looking for both event log and the sysmon logs. So the one of the major event ID which get to be associated over the process injection is to be the 4688. So the 4688 is nothing but the event ID which will be get associated with the process creation event. So by filtering and monitoring those particular 4688 will helps us to prioritize the event which get to be associated with the process creation activity. But we might be came up with the question that the process creation is not just a malicious function, it will be get performed over the legit application too. So creating a process is not a malicious function, malicious operation, but when it's done by the malicious application it will be considered as the malicious. So we might be came up with the question how we will be prioritizing the uh, malicious or suspicious process creation. So here I have been given some point which helps you to correlate or differentiate the legit process creation from the malicious process creation. So generally the process creation which get involved over the process, like a parent process like the notepad, winlogon, run DLL32 or task manager seems to be suspicious. Why? Because these particular executables or the services will not be performing the process creation activity. But if you have been taking the example of Chrome or the browsers, they will be creating process simultaneously. The activity which is been get associated with the browser or some other executables or been legit. So, but by this particular these are all the some servers which they will be not performing the process creation often, but yeah, if you have been get to see the 4688 with this particular executable, it seems to be a suspicious. So we need to be further investigated those. And the second point of correlation is the Windows architect program can be raise a concern, especially when a executable in one architect format and behavior exponentially. So the attacker might be get executing the multiple other different architecture of Windows executables. So it might be the second detection point, and the third would be the executing or the process creation activity which is been get initiated from the suspicious directories like the temp or download or desktop. If the process creation activity which is been get executed from the um, temp or download directory, it will be definitely considered as the malicious, because it's not a legit, it's not a basic behavior of the executables to get create process on this particular directory. So usually it will be get created on the system 32, but if there is another directory which has been get involved over this particular process creation, then it might be considered as the suspicious. And the final point will helps you to exactly pinpoint the suspiciousness when we have been seeing the process with the privilege of page execute read write. It is definitely the one which the process has been, it's been a malicious. So the process generally has three states, like it can be read, execute, or write. But when a process is been get associated with this three function, then it's been overly privileged and it is been definitely get targeted by the attacker, and it's been get compromised over it. So by this particular correlation, we can effectively identify the process suspicious process creation. So let me quickly execute the event code of 4688. So here, as you see, like there are a lot of, as I mentioned, there will be a lot of activity which is been get associated with the 4688. So every activity which are resulted or not a malicious, but based on the based on our further correlation, we get to identify the malicious one. So by checking the parent process executable, we can effectively identify the suspiciousness of the process creation. Here you get to see lot of executables which are been get associated with the process injection activity, like the svc host, cmd.exe, explorer.exe, Firefox, iExplorer. So as I mentioned, the browsers have been by default, they will be creating every process based on their tab, so it's been legit. But if you're seeing something which is not it is not malicious, like the notepad.exe. Generally, notepad.exe will not be creating any process, and we are seeing something which is being get like update.exe from the temp, which is not the usual character to create the processes. By identifying those, we can effectively perform our detection later. So I'm to given the query, so you can like by the end of the session you will get to have this query. So you can feel free to test it over your local SIM for your testing purposes. So here I have been excluded some common point. So it will be gives us with some minimalistic result. But by the basic understanding, so here we have where I have been simulated multiple attacks. So but we will be first checking the activity which are related to the classic process injection. So you can, after filtering that, you can effectively pinpoint the location, so you get to know the parent process or the process ID which get associated with that. So first let us filter out the classic process injection.exe and with the process creation activity. So here we get to came up with the two result with the process creation activity. By reviewing those, we get to know additional detail over it. So here, by reviewing those logs, we can effectively see the uh, process name CMD has been get executed to the classic process injection, which means that the attacker has been dropped this particular classic process injection.exe over the internet, like to the endpoint, and they have been using the CMD to execute that particular logs. So this is how we can effectively monitor, effectively identify the suspicious process over using our traditional monitoring stuff. And after monitoring those, we will be get to identify the event which is been get associated with those. So as I mentioned, we will be not getting or accumulating lot of logs from the particular traditional monitoring stuff. We will be get to see the process creation activity. But if we are need to get to have a very detailed overview about this particular activity, we will be deep diving into our sysmon logs. So by default, it's also true that the many enterprise will not be get enabling or accumulating the sysmon logs over their endpoint, but the advanced CDR solution will get use the same features to perform their monitoring. So as a traditional event, we won't get much information. Like we get to see the process creation for 688 event, and we get to see multiple executable, but we can't pinpoint or we can't correlate such event. To perform our correlation, we will be jumping into our next correlation method by using the sysmon. So in the sysmon, we will be get to see a lot of detailed information as compared to the event logs. So here we will be correlating first the process creation, and if the process is been getting connected over any, it's performing any network connection, and we will be looking for the remote thread process, and we will be optionally looking for the termination process. But the first three correlation will help us to pinpoint the activity so you will be get to see the differentiate how effective we can use this sysmon to be correlating such um, process injection stuff. So again, let me switch to the SIM. So first we will be get to list the event of the process creation which get associated with the classic process injection. So as we identified the executables, and we are just correlating with the sysmon dataset with the event code one. So to get to have a very detailed understanding of the event ID of the sysmon, you get to visit the official documentation from the Microsoft. So where they have given a very detailed event ID with that event action which been mean to this particular event ID. The first we will be checking for the process creation which get associated with the identified executable. So here I came to see a multiple logs which has been get associated over it. We can quickly review those. So here we came to see the process injection, like the CMD has created the process injection.exe. Let's quickly search for some interesting stuff. So here we came to see this particular process injection is being get downloaded by the Firefox, and later it get to be executed with the cmd.exe. Yeah. So later the particular get to be executed on the cmd.exe, and it might be targeting some legit process over the endpoint. So this is how effective this sysmon will helps you while correlating those. You will be get to see the visibility which we will be getting over the event log and the sysmon logs. So our next step is to identify the network connection event which get to be associated over the classic process injection.exe. Yeah, it might take some times to querying those particular logs. So here is the one which we are being given the approach has been effectively using the traditional logging to identify the process injection threat. So this might be a very trouble in the enterprise network. So it's not recommended to get directly deployed over the enterprise. It's just been to get observe and understanding the pattern where the um, process injection types have been working. So by this understanding, we can, even if the enterprise doesn't have a very high-end detection mechanism like EDR, XDR, we can yet to find the particular suspiciousness using the traditional logs, like the sysmon or the event logs. Research. So it's taking some time to queue those. Yeah, let's wait for a couple of more minutes. Okay, terminate this. So the monitoring the event code tree which is get associated with the sysmon will be gives us a very high visibility because the network connection which has been get initiated from the process will be get effectively monitored by this particular query. So after identifying the executables, suspicious executable, we can directly jump into the network connection to check whether the exe has been performing any even the process have been performing any network connection over the attackers or not. So this is how it will be get effective. And the final correlation we will be using the remote thread, create remote thread. In case of the classic process injection, it's a very basic behavior that the characteristic of the classic process injection will be get to create multiple remote thread over the process to execute their payload. So by monitoring those from the identified one will help us to determine the suspiciousness of the executables. So here we get to have the result like when we are get to see that the particular notepad.exe, yeah, okay, it's been just let's first, instead of querying those, like let's just bulkly query the event code tree and we will be querying our executables. Okay. Here we need to find, this is another interesting way by correlating the network traffic and identifying any suspicious exe which has been get initiating the um, network connection. Here we don't see much. We are seeing the FileBeat agent and Elastic agent and the Firefox. And we came to see the notepad.exe has been making some connections over external. So now let's quickly check those particular one. Yeah, might be the query. Yeah. So, okay. So here we are specifically looking for the event ID 3, which means the network connection which get happened by the notepad.exe. So here we get to see the network connection has been initiated. By reviewing those logs, we will be get to see the destination IP which the notepad has been executing the connection. So let's quickly check those logs. So here I can see this notepad.exe has been getting initiated from the source IP to the destination IP.15.3 by the destination port 555. So if the endpoint get to be have a network monitoring tool, we can get to see the request and response where the attacker is been get executing. But by this we can effectively identify the target IP. So this is how it will be get helpful in our case. So we will be correlating such events with the traditional monitoring to identify our malicious and suspicious process. So the next and most important step is to monitor the remote threat. So let's quickly modify the event code, and we will be identifying the event which get associated. So this is again it's been a very uh, interesting case. The create remote thread is not actually a malicious one, but it can be used by the malicious processes. So that's why we will be get to check is there any event which we will be identifying the suspicious executables which using the remote thread process. So here we came to see there are multiple uh, remote thread execution which get initiated by the notepad.exe, which makes sense. So here we get the correlation. So if you are particularly looking at the log, we get to know the yeah. So get to know the particular classic process.exe uh, which has been acting as the source image or the parent process, and this notepad.exe is acting as the um, like child process, which means the attacker has been get deployed this particular exe and it's been targeting the notepad.exe. So if in case if the machine has been get compromised, we can get download the image of the machine, and if you are doing the post compromise investigation, we get to see what exactly the payload which get injected over the notepad.exe. So this is how we will be performing our investigation when it's come to a process injection based threat. It might be a bit complex. As I mentioned, it's not just a easy technique without using the advanced detection because we don't have much visibility. But by this particular correlation, first we need to identify the process creation activity, and we need to prioritize and identify the suspicious process creation executable, and we need to further correlate with the sysmon by correlating like is that particular executable has been connecting to our network, or is there any create remote thread process which has been executed over the identify process. By this multiple correlation we can effectively identify and investigate the classic process injection. So by understanding the attack, that's how we can perform a better defense on this particular case. So it's not that easy to get investigate those threats, but with a very better understanding over it, we can effectively identify those. So these are all the methodology and the technique which you can get to identify their attack pattern and their behavior. So I hope till now we have been seen through the classic process injection, but now we will be get jumping into some bit advanced technique of the process following. So as I mentioned, every process injection technique's behavior will be get different. So in such case, previously we get to see the process injection technique which get used to the remote threat creation, but in case of process following, we get not to see the remote threat creation. So the entire pattern and the techniques will be get different in this case. The process following will generally create a suspended process over the targeted victim, and it will be get unmapping their executable section, and it will be get injecting the malicious code over it, and it will rerun the process. So to be get more simpler in the case, first, as in case of classic process injection, it will be either or may not create the process. So it will be generally targeted the running process, but in case of process following, it will be creating a process in the suspended state. So the first correlation will be create monitor on the um, process creation, and it will be get to unmap the executable section. In such case, if it is a notepad, if the attacker is been try targeting the notepad, it will be first removing the executable state in the memory. It will be get unmapped, and it will be injecting the malicious code over it. And later, if the operation is been get success, the attacker can execute the code, and the um, the legit notepad.exe will get executed and the attacker can achieve their target. So same similar pattern with the different approach will be get to seen. First, the attacker will opening the process where we might be seeing the create process action, and they will be allocating the memory, and they will be writing on the memory and creating. So in such case, the create thread will be not there. They will be executing the thread. So this is the major differentiate between the classic process injection and the process following, where we will be not get to identify the remote thread. So here we will be using an additional tool of OS query, but let me try because it will be get only applicable when when the process injection is being get happen. So here we will be again correlating the sysmon and event log to identify the process following technique. So the traditional way, the process injection technique will always get to be investigation begins by the filter outing the event of the process creation. So let me quickly, yeah. So here we have get to see multiple event which is been get associated with the 4688 process creation. So we have been previously seen how to differentiate the legit process from the malicious process. So we can get to follow the same technique, and yeah, so we will be get reviewing those. So from here, our responsibility is to filter out the suspicious executable from those. Here we can see the notepad.exe. So there are multiple patch.exe which I have been personally simulated. But in our case, we simply assume that the notepad is being get presented. So first we will be executing the process. So here our next correlation will be correlating both the event, like both the result in our upcoming query, and we will be proceed investigating further. So in case of the enterprise monitoring or the enterprise detection, our responsibility is to identify the process. If you have been get to result with multiple processes, we need to get correlate those particular identified process for our investigation. So let me quickly execute this query. Yeah, so here I get to see the event which is been get associated with the particular criteria, where I can see, yeah, so here I can effectively see that the notepad.exe is being the new process which get to be created, and the parent process it seems to be the process following.exe. In such case, we can effectively identify that the process following.exe will be, it has been get deployed or be get dropped over the victim machine, and the process following.exe has created the new process named the notepad.exe. So this is the point where we can identify till using our event log. But if you have been more familiar with the OS query, okay, OS query is nothing but the uh, querying tool which get developed by the Facebook. It is one of the tool which will be get installed over the endpoint, and we can query multiple result over it. So as you will be remembering that I have been mentioned that if any process with the particular execute read write, it's been definitely considered as the malicious. But by effectively execute this command. So from our previous query, we identify the process ID. So we can identify the process ID. So here it's, yeah. So here we have been identifying the parent process ID like 4852. After get to identify this particular process ID, we can execute this particular query over the OS query with that identify parent process ID. If we have been observing the process with the page execute read write, then the process it's been a malicious one. So it's just a correlation factor where we will be validating our finding with this particular OS query. Ultimately, OS query is not get to be observed over the enterprise. It's been solely used for the research purpose. So we can use this particular technique while performing our research over it. So it's a optional and additional steps. And we will be beginning our sysmon correlation. So here if you get to see the different between the process injection and the process following technique. So here we will be also prioritizing the process creation activity, and we will be checking for the network connection from the notepad.exe and the image load. So image load will also legit id where we can't use this particular finding to determine the maliciousness, but it's just a correlation factor. The one major factor of the process following is the process tampering. So as you will be recalling the technique, the attacker will be unmapping the executable section and they will be injecting their malicious code. When this particular behavior get to be happen, we get to identify the event ID 25, which is being get responsible over the process tampering. When an running process or a new process will get to be tampered or will get to be modified, this particular event ID will be get prompted. By this particular correlation, we can effectively identify the process hollowing technique. So let's quickly execute our queries and find the result over the SIM. First, let me querying the event ID 1, which has been get associated. So here we have been get to see, we already seen that like 4688 has been associated with the process following.exe and the notepad.exe. We are again cross checking that the process following.exe has been created the notepad.exe. So this is how we will be first clearing our initial point of the process creation, and we will be checking for the network connection with the event id 3. Yeah, so here we will be get to see the event which is been get associated with the network connection, and it's been get connecting to the destination IP over the destination port 8888. If the endpoint is being get monitored by the network monitoring tools or the Wireshark, we can effectively see the communication. Unless it's been encrypted, we can get to see the command which is been get executed over the client server, and we get to know understand the attacker mindset over it. On the image load, we will be get to see the image load. So here you will be get to observe multiple log. As I mentioned, image load is a very legit function which has been get observed over it. But by after identifying the malicious process, it will be get to understand what exactly get to be loaded over the malicious one. Here we have been seeing the winsock.dll. These are we can get to identify the DLL which is been get associated, and based on that we can effectively identify their attack pattern. So by understanding the WSOC30.dll, it might be establishing a network connection. As we already identified, it has been establishing a connection. By this particular correlation, you get to understand their actual reason of execution. So here comes our interesting correlation like the process tampering. So this particular process tampering will not get to be seen on the classic process injection. So it's been specifically applicable on the process following technique as it's been the by default behavior. So here you have been get to see the notepad.txt has been get tampered. So by this particular stuff, we get to be assume with them further correlation. We get to see the process has been get tampered, and there might be the high chance of the memory has been get uh, updated or get injected with multiple processes. So this is how an process injection get to be investigated with the traditional mechanism. So these are all the patterns and behavior where will be used in our research purpose, but it it is not applicable in the enterprise level stuff. But while performing your investigation, these correlation will be helps you on understanding their attack pattern. So again, I'm just mentioning this particular these process injection techniques have been very hard to be get identified with the traditional case. But if an enterprise is been get deployed over with endpoints or the XDRs, as I shown the image, so there will be keep on monitoring the syscalls. Like if there is a executable which is been get invoking the NT virtual memory alloc. So then the EDR will automatically get identify those particular executable and mark that the suspicious. So there is a high differentiate, but our ideology is to get present how effectively we can identify the process injection with the traditional monitoring stuff. So we can use the OS query, we can use the sysmon logs, and we can use the event viewer to get identify those. So I hope this is what I just planned to be present here today. So you will get to have the various ideology, and you will, if you have a chance, you can get visit our certification for the process injection, and we get to give a multiple payload over it. You will have a very good understanding of various process injection has been get working and what are all the event ID which is associated with it. And I hope this session is been get useful to you. And before our Q&A, like as we announced, there is a 50% off which is been get distributed over the participants. So you just need to visit this URL and you need to give up ideology why the blue team is more better than the red team. So share your thought and just grab the 50% off over the blue team fundamental. So yeah, let's directly jump into our Q&A. So if you have any queries or you can get to be asked now. Okay, I hope the stuffs are more clear in our case. So let me conclude with the short summary. So process injection techniques on or one of the techniques which created by the adversaries or the red team to specifically avoid the defense. So the traditional monitoring will be get failed over the technique. But by following this particular correlation pattern, we can effectively identify those if the enterprise or the machine which does not get to be deployed with those advanced solution. So this is a 50-50 chance. It's not been recommended to use over the enterprise to directly get deployed and monitoring those. So, but by using this strategy, you get to understand their attack pattern and you will be developing your investigation skills. Thanks for joining.